There has been a serious issue in Fortnite competitive over the past couple of months ever since Chapter 4 launched. Every time I see players competing in all of these various different tournaments, ranked games, scrims, every single time I'm noticing common issues that a bunch of players are going to be making. I want to highlight for you guys the general way in which you have been playing Fortnite wrong ever since the updates of Chapter 4. And I really hope you guys enjoy it and value this video because I really do think that this is really helpful for a lot of you guys that want to kind of revolutionize your gameplay into the more modern era of competitive Fortnite. The first thing that's really apparent to me, I've noticed this by watching a lot of different, even professional players, every single person that I watch pretty much has not been realizing this. This is that the enemy in Fortnite Battle Royale is going to be the storm and not the players. Now the whole point of the game is that you're obviously in a battle bus, you drop down onto an island with 100 other players and your goal is to be the last one standing and place as high as you possibly can. No part of that description of the game requires you to get any eliminations whatsoever. It says be the last one standing, not kill everybody else in the lobby. There's a big difference between those two. While the enemy players are able to eliminate you, the storm is the barrier that pushes you towards them. So it's more like the enemy players are going to be obstacles blocking you from running from the storm. That's the way I want you guys to start thinking about how these enemy players are going to be interacting with you throughout the game. The terrain and the storm are the two things that you want to try and avoid. If there's complicated terrain that you're not very good at moving around, if the storm's coming in and it's going to eliminate you, those are the two things that you need to be avoiding. If you play like this, not only will your rotations and movement be a lot more efficient, you're also going to be moving with much better of a purpose. You're going to be thinking more about where you rotate, you're really going to be analyzing the terrain around you, and then players are going to be more of an afterthought. The way I would recommend it is you kind of look at terrain like mountains, different lakes, different rivers, and then look at the enemy players' builds and where they're based up, where they're standing, where they're rotating, and treat those as terrain as well. If you think of the whole map and the whole game as kind of one big obstacle that you need to kind of come over, that's the best way to actually think about Fortnite competitive in the modern era. However, I would recommend at the same time, don't be scared of the storm. There are so many different ways to get white health such as floppers, med mist, bandages, med kits, the list goes on and on. You can tank storm damage for a long amount of time in order to better position and avoid congested areas. Now the biggest part of an issue that I see with a lot of players is that as they're rotating, as they're learning where to position, especially with these new zones, they're not going to be able to rotate soon enough, and they're oftentimes going to get caught in the storm, especially if their drop spot is on the edge of the map. However, I really want to reinforce the idea that it is really not that bad if you guys do get caught in the storm, especially if you get white health. What this is really going to do for you guys is that it's going to basically lay down an area of cover where you're not really going to be attacked by enemy players, because once again, most enemy players are really scared of the storm and trying to run away. You can kind of hide in there if you want to. And then you can rotate around the map, rotate to a better area, try to avoid fights, avoid congested areas, the list goes on and on for what you can do. What I would recommend you guys try to do is if you are landing on a drop spot a bit more at the edge of the map, obviously fight off spawn, do anything you have to do there. And then when the storm comes in, don't really worry about it, especially if you have a lot of white health. You guys can keep looting, loot the drop spot to your full potential, max out on materials, health, get the best loot you can, and only then you guys should rotate around to the different parts of the map. Obviously this advice can vary depending on where the zone is positioned, where the storm eye pops up. However, it's very valuable advice I would give to a lot of you guys trying to play passive and trying to place very highly in all of your ranked games. A big part of actually improving is also looking at the enemy players and how to combat them. Obviously guys, this is going to be more nuts and bolts in terms of actual mechanics, but a lot of people when they think about exactly how to win fights, they're like, okay, my building and editing needs to be as fast as possible. I need to be an absolute crackhead, absolutely spamming builds and piecing up everybody like it's nothing. However, this is really a bad mentality that's a little bit outdated, especially with the modern day. Fortnite has kind of had an up and down relationship with building and editing when regarding fighting. Fortnite in the start regarded building as one of the most important things in the early competitive days. And then it kind of died down when aim and positioning got a lot more valuable at the start of Chapter 2. Then in the end of Chapter 2, really good spamming, building, and editing got really valuable. It kind of died down a little bit in Chapter 3. It rose up towards the end of Chapter 3, and then now in Chapter 4, we're kind of at an all-time low for how valuable building and editing is. Everybody's going to be having a pretty good level of base building and editing, so it's really not that big of a difference from you to another player. Nowadays, the thing that separates players from each other and how much they succeed is their knowledge of the map and how to control it, and then also what mechanics they actually improve on in order to combat and win these engagements with enemies. The two mechanics I would recommend to you guys are going to be your movement, number 1, and then your aim, which is number 2. Now, movement is important because as you guys are building, piece controlling people, and then piecing people up, peaks are very important. However, your movement around these peaks is extremely important to assure you actually getting the shot off and actually hitting your opponent without them being able to hit you as easily. Movement around different edits and obstacles will allow you to get a good line of sight, and then obviously the second mechanic of aim will help you to secure the kill. Obviously, I'd recommend you guys use stuff like movement courses in creative, aim courses in creative, Kovacs, anything you can in order to improve these mechanics. These are very valuable for your competitive success. That's the overall general recommendation for fights I would recommend to you guys. However, something else that I've really noticed in competitive that's been a serious issue that a lot of people are playing wrong is adjusting to the new changes in the zones. So as you guys know, with the launch of Chapter 4, the zones changed quite a bit. There's going to be 12 zones now instead of the old 9 zones. And obviously they're going to be moving way faster, they're going to be doing 1 tick of damage for a longer time, and the damage will steadily increase towards the end of the game. What I would recommend for you guys is that you focus on each zone rather than the stages of the game that used to exist before. Obviously guys, the stages of the game before used to be the early, the mid, and the late game. I'd recommend rather than focusing on each individual stage and separating them into 3 chunks, focus on each zone with the new ones. There's early game zones, which is probably going to be around zones 1 through 3. Then there's going to be mid game zones, which is going to be 4 to 7. And then end game zones, which is going to be 7 to 12. Obviously, this is going to vary from player to player and lobby to lobby. However, what's really important is that you understand this fact. The early, mid, and late game are not as clear-cut in terms of their differences. Nowadays, if you play zone by zone, it's a lot easier than separating into 3 separate sections. What this will allow you to do is that it's going to allow you to spend your resources much more wisely when moving through each stage of the game. Your resources consist of ammo, health, materials, meds. This will allow you to judge whether it's a good idea to take a fight depending on the zone. Since there are more zones with less time, farming and getting a bunch more white health with less loot on the map will be a lot more tough as the map gets sectioned off faster and faster with these faster moving zones. It's now just a lot harder to farm materials and get refreshes on loot without getting eliminations and risking possibly getting eliminated. What I would highly recommend to you guys is that in general, you need to adjust to the new movement of the zones rather than adjusting to the different types of times in the game. Obviously, which used to be early, mid, and late game. Nowadays, I'd recommend you guys just generally play games zone by zone, and I believe it's really gonna help you out. Many players have failed to do this general fact. If they're not playing zone by zone, the issue that I see a lot of the time is that they get eliminated around the 3rd or the 4th zone, because they leave their drop spot and then they get caught in a place where they're not supposed to be. They get caught in the storm, stuck in a mid-game fight, and then they get eliminated. Or vice versa, they survive till around zone 7, and then they try to take a fight right at the start of the late game zones and then get eliminated. If you think about it from the perspective of a person who's thinking zone by zone, it's a lot easier to plan where to rotate, how to move, when to move, and how to play your pace of the game. As I covered in this video, guys, the topics went in the order of generally understanding what is your true enemy of the storm and terrain, not being scared of the storm and how to rotate around it, combating the enemy players by improving your movement and your aim, and then focusing on your zone rather than each stage of the game that used to be the early, mid, and late game. I really hope you guys did enjoy this video. I'm really trying to make nice, helpful videos that will really help, especially in this brand new ranked game mode. With this new ranked game mode out, a lot of players are going to be playing a lot differently when it comes to actually competing in competitive Fortnite. It's a really valuable way to actually compete if you guys follow all these tips and start playing Fortnite the way it's meant to be played, especially in the modern era. But that's about it for this video, guys. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye, guys.